Take two. Let's do the whole video again because someone forgot to hit record. Crowdfunding, Black Friday. You're spending it with me, so you're not spending it out there, hopefully. Well, let's truth be told, you can spend it online faster than you can probably go out there and spend it regardless. But hopefully by watching this, I can save you some money and let you know what the big stuff is that's gone out this week as well, because Black Friday ain't holding back. Let's go. Just spent half an hour doing this thing and didn't hit record. Awesome. Awesome. I love my life. Look, you know where we're starting. Nemesis Retaliation. Freaking almost $3 million at the time of me filming this. It'll be well over $3 million by the time you watch this. Unfortunately, Awakened Realms has continued the trend of giving us very little gameplay along with no rulebook at the time of the campaign. And I feel like this is one of those weird gaming situations that people have, you know, as they talk about with celebrities, right? A parasocial relationship with the game where they feel obligated to defend the shortcomings because they love it, or they feel obligated, or they feel that they have a special relationship with them somehow through the computer, through the social media, through the media in general, the dynamics online of this. And that's sort of what I see, people defending this. Well, you can see that there's a gameplay video on there, Chris. You don't need a rulebook. No, I don't care if you are the literal biggest crowdfunder on the web. This is something that I talk about no matter what the size of the campaign or publisher or game is. If you don't have the rulebook, that gameplay video that we'll scroll down to eventually doesn't tell me how much overhead is actually there. How much minutia are they not talking about? How much was learned? Is this a complete rule book? Or is Awakened Realms going to do sort of like they've done with a couple of their other games, even more recently, Dragon Eclipse? The whole fact that you may end up with a different product in the end rather than what's being presented, because it's only half-baked in the time that this is going. And again, I don't say that's necessarily a bad thing, but you could be pledging for something that's not what you're ultimately getting right now. Dragon Eclipse, there was really no conversation, no gameplay of the two-player mode during the campaign, being marketed as a two-player game. If that doesn't concern you a little bit, I'm not saying you have to like totally step off your fanboyism wagon, right? You can still get your Galactus model if you're, you know what I'm saying. But if you can't or will not be open to criticism of this, check your relationship with them. I like some of the stuff they do. Their miniatures on this page are second to none. But people are saying, well, Chris, they tell you about the new gameplay mechanics. They really do not highlight what makes this one different than Lockdown, this one different than Nemesis. We'll get to the quotes down here, right here, as you can start to see. I love the new variation for exploration and combat. What is it? Always on its toes. Okay, that doesn't tell me. Again, I'm not criticizing the person who did that quote. I'm criticizing the fact that none of this is here, right? Okay, there's a new trader race. What makes them different? All I see is that you're highlighting the quality models and standees. And yes, I'm going to give them freaking amazing kudos at the same time for putting out a standee version. I think that's awesome. Team standee. But again, folks, these things are not all for or against. There is some nuance to this conversation, just like politics, just like everything else. It's so divisive lately. You have to be able to do that. And yeah, small secret, save money, blah, 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 you know, right? Tons of content here, tons of awesome looking miniatures. There's the different stretch goals as well as the miniature versus standees. And I've routinely given them kudos for not bundling all the miniatures in. But again, the issue here is new actions. Okay, what are they? Tactical belt. Okay, a little bit of stuff. The oxygen is the main new one that they talk about. But that's about it. Maybe they talk about the management over here. They show you what some of them are. They don't show you how you're going to be necessarily using them in this more modular, not a board setup. That's the other big difference with this air mechanism you're going to be utilizing as you splash down into corridors, trying to fight the aliens more so than in the other games with a modular, completely modular exploration setup, which is the key component difference there. So can I tell you for sure right now that I'm not going to end up with a copy of this in my collection? No, I can't. No, but there's not enough information on here to sell me on this, right? Look at this. This is all component stuff, right? Exploration, enter the unknown, the modular system map. You're getting exploration cards and they talk about it, but they don't. How are you exploring? In what way, manner, shape, form is the exploration happening? How are these corridors lining up? What is the mechanism that you're doing so? You give me hordes, you give me queen. What's the difference with these hordes, queens, and drones than with the other game? How is their AI system going to be different? Again, I would like to see some of that on the page. I don't want to have to scroll down here. Again, I'm halfway down the page, right? We have seen nothing explicit on gameplay at this point. We haven't even hit the rewards at this point. Limited auction. Okay. Do you stock up? How do you stock up? The robot. How do you, why? What? Interchangeable. Okay. And in what way? Again, the vaguest description down here. I love the standard pledge, $65. Even the $105 is going to be a good value. So never argue value on this. The other nice thing is they're allowing you to piecemeal whatever else you want from Lockdown and from the original. And so again, I'll give kudos where kudos is due in that sense. If you want some of this other stuff, they're charging pretty reasonable, pretty close to where the prices were previously. And that's pretty freaking awesome at the same time, right? So you can have both. You can have the positives and the negatives. If you're someone on one side or the other, check yourself in the mirror. Again, preview, 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 impression preview, unboxing. I don't know what this is. I don't read Polish, but you know, that's the issue, right? Is that all of those so far, even this one right here, preview. So, you know, previews. Sun dropping, you know, trilogy, track record. That's everything though. Am I going to get it? I have no idea. Now, the issue that I will say is you're better off getting anything else except for those stretch goals that aren't easily available at retail. Because look at this. If you want an old stuff and new stuff there, folks. April 2025, and they're not on time with any of their things. So you could be potentially talking 2 years out. That's the other reason I would potentially not back this, is because you're talking throwing up anywhere between 100 to, you know, I don't know, say $500 again. And we'll talk about that price point because that's another key feature in a lot of these other games this week of the multi-$100 pledge levels being tossed around. You could easily spend $1,000 on crowdfunding right now between 3 games. If that's not scary to you, if that's not a little bit of an indication that maybe too much, you know, of the other stuff is being thrown around, well, maybe it should be. Whatever. Shipping is fine. Whatever it is. Shipping is never a make it or break it. And if it is, there's another issue from that side of things. But that's it in a nutshell. I would be happy to be wrong and to see a rulebook very shortly. I hopefully will, so I can give you more thoughts, more breakdown, and more differences in terms of this and the other two. But right now, if it's anything to go off of Dragon Eclipse or even the more recent Elder Scrolls from Chip Theory, it's not going to come during the campaign. And I see that because it's a marketing tactic, folks. It's a marketing tactic. Because you're going to have more people that are willing to bet the rulebook is going to be good than that are going to wait for the rulebook and say, I won't back it without a rulebook. And so you can leverage one side or the other. You're going to leverage that way altogether. And from a business perspective, I understand it completely. From a consumer CYA perspective, you know, I got to have it and I need to be more certain on it. I do not buy games to resell games when I do not like them. That is not the main reason I back stuff on crowdfunding. I know for a lot of people it still is, but not for me, and I hope that it helps you. There you go. Let's stay over in GameFound. Food Chain Magnate. Way too much money. I'm going to be having my Don't Back Anything video out over this weekend or the beginning of next week. The key theme here is going to be $300, right? Because we have like 4 or 5 campaigns right now that you can spend $300 plus or more just to get the game. Food Chain Magnate. Lucky Duck. What are we getting? You're getting 300 euros. 300 euros! Plus another, you know, 70 euros for shipping in North America. It's going to cost you nearly $400 shipped right now. What is it bringing to you of this action restaurant-based goodness from Splatter originally? Nothing new or different. There's a few minor stretchish goals, which are mostly deluxifications, which I'm sure were completely pre-planned in the first place. But let's talk about this. This is jumping the shark. Contentification, deluxification, just way too much. And, you know, at least with Foundations of Rome, you could make the argument that the aesthetic overall picture is significantly improved, right? No one, hardly anyone, looks at Foundations of Rome and goes, you know what? That doesn't add anything, right? There are too many people, more than a couple in this case, saying that I don't like this. This isn't appealing to me. It's not giving me what I was hoping from that. Now, it doesn't stop people from throwing money at it at the same time. hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and 600s of thousands of dollars at the time of me filming this. But do you really need slightly better feeling money? Is this really that aesthetically appealing right now? Like this picture, from this picture, can you tell what any of those restaurants are? I cannot. So at least with Foundations of Rome, you had a little bit more aesthetic appeal, you know, if you're going to pay that much. But I don't see it here. Gameplay, no one's going to argue. Do you have 3 to 4 hours to play this game? Do you need to be able to play with up to 6 people with the catch-up expansion? You don't. You can go pre-order this for $170 on Splatter with the expansion right now. Now, you can also make an easy argument to me that somehow Splatter should have been able to, at this point, get their cost production down as a whole, but that's neither here nor there. I won't make that argument. I don't care about that. This isn't a game for me regardless. But the price point, the inflation of both of those is. And this doesn't change how good a game is, and how good a game is doesn't change that is happening more and more and more. You want this copy, you're going to have to get it here. So FOMO away and spend your $304 in this game, because this better be a top 5 game for you all time if you're going to get it. Do you want an organizer? Well, go over to like one of the 3D printing sites, download an STL file, have someone make it for you for $5 locally, and there you go. So you're paying a lot of money, $130+ before shipping, to get all of this slight, quality of life measure-ish, maybe? Visibility, yeah, it's visible. It's something. Visible is definitely an adjective for it. But there you go. I don't know what else to say. It's the elephant in the room that I don't think a lot of this is necessary. And I say this as a person who has too many plastic junk in his collection already. So take it for what it is. You can get a few extras if you want as well. That's a lot of money, folks. It shows you how you go if you're not familiar with it whatsoever. Structure your company. Choose your actions. Take your order of business based on the turn order in the first place. Perform all of the actions available to you. Serve the food, meet the demands, pay your staff, do your marketing, and then rinse and repeat. People love it. Heavy people love it. If you're not a heavy gamer, though, this one's not going to change your mind. This isn't more accessible. This isn't easier to play. This isn't more streamlined. It's straight up just going to be more in every single way. So there you go. Food Chain Magnate, way too much money. A lot of money being thrown around for a lot of extras. And if that's you, I guess so. There you go. Check it out. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. I always want to say Heroes of Land, Sea, and Air. But Deluxe Reprint, it's offering you 2 new box content games. Essentially like an event actions deck and then more asymmetric powers that are going to go along with it in that way. And, as I always say, right? If you buy more, you save. No, I never say that. I say buy less and you'll save more that way. When you start labeling an experience as incomplete, unless you're paying $300 plus, that worries me. Because you'll see down here in this line graph that they purposefully put up, you need to get more to have a epic experience. I want an epic experience with the core game, thank you. And if I want to add a little superfluous stuff on the top per my own customization and whims, then I'll do it, right? Distinct economic system of a 4X with resource allocations, as well as a twist on worker placements where you have to use your serfs to construct buildings. Your buildings and your capitals get stronger. You win, lose via battles, and you area control at the same time. Yeah, you're going to get somewhat of a discount. Now, this doesn't say what the discount is, right? Is this discount off of what I can buy it for online at online retailers? Or is this 30% off MSRP? 30% off the MSRP, folks, not that good of a deal. Doesn't say though. So yeah, there's tons of content for it. So it's been out of stock. Okay, well, maybe I'm just wrong. So out of stock is out of stock, but here's that line, right? Insane experience, epic experience, right? Look at this is purposely done too, folks. With this graphic, you can see this graphic right here. You can see that these first 3 are evenly spaced. Then purposefully between this one and the highest amount you can pay right now, it's more there. That is purposeful. That's not a design error. That's a feature to make you, again, subtly, unconsciously associate it with that. But $300 if you want all this stuff. Do you know the difference between any of the mercenary packs? Do you need all the mercenary packs? Do you need the Pestilence or the Nomads or the Siege Engines or sleeves? An extra game mat? Yeah, you can get all that stuff. $70 though is going to be the new stuff just with these 2 new card decks. That's a lot though at the same time. 30% off. They say 2 new boxes of cards here are going to be $90 at retail. That's insane. That's insane expansion pricing. I don't care what game it is. $45 for an expansion is a lot of money for mostly a card-based system from what I can tell. Could be wrong. And then they finally get down here and you can see all the endorsements and all the rewards and all of the this is a glorious game sort of things down here. They give you an overview as well. It's about 45 minutes a player. You can play from 1 to 7. Can you imagine that? 7 people for 45 minutes apiece. That gives me a headache more so than having to do this video a second time over. 2 versus 2, free for all, 3 versus 3, solo. This game will do everything, and I'm sure, as I always say, all modes are going to be excellent. Solo is probably going to be just as good as 2 versus 2 and 3 versus 3. I mean, I'm being facetious again, but you know that the modes are going to be different depending on the strength of them as a whole. Your towers, your strengths, your buildings, your armies are all variously developing along as you go, and you're doing the usual 4X thing, right? Explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. Most victory points is going to end it. You have the most regions controlled. It's going to be one way that you're doing it alongside the battles. So they run you through all of the different factions here that you want to know about, including the newer ones, the mercenaries. Again, you know, in case 10 different mercenaries, oh good gracious, isn't enough, then you have some more stuff down here. So I look at this and again I go, this is a lifestyle game. How many times a month are you going to play this game? Because that's the only way I can look at this and say that you need something for $300 at this point. And maybe that's why it's only got $200,000. I say that, you know, sort of tongue in cheek. I mean, $200,000 is $200,000 more than I will ever raise on crowdfunding. But I have to wonder if that's saturation as well, of not as many people going in and looking at it and going, I need this, especially from a price point, but also where am I going to store that amount of stuff anymore anyway? So we'll see where it goes. Solid game based off those awards that everyone's given it, but check it out for yourself to see what's right and wrong for you. Now, let's go over to crowdfunding on Kickstarter. Horizon Forbidden West, Seeds of Rebellion, Steamforge's latest. This is the 2.0 version of Horizon. The question just is it actually the 2.0 version? It reminds me very much style-wise of Monster Hunter. They're saying we're streamlining it, we're making some changes, we're improving off of the base, but don't worry, you can still get the upgrade kit for the base, so if you still want to get the other one, you can get the other one too, right? But don't worry because it's a 2.0, but maybe not a 2.0 because you can still buy the other one and you can still buy both because we don't want to actually take one off the market and want to get you in on them all. Now, the interesting thing about this one is, as opposed to all those other campaigns that we've seen recently from them, which they've done with a few of the other ones like Devil May Cry, is there's only one pledge level, this Martial pledge level for $140 right now. That's interesting. It's very interesting. What's also interesting is the video content down below, and we'll talk about that in a minute as we get down there. The new aspect is it's pure cooperative. They heard you. They heard the semi-co-op. This doesn't work. Semi-co-op, people don't want to play semi-co-ops. I hate saying that, but they don't. There's going to be story. There's going to be deck building. There's going to be evolution. This is not going to be Cthulhu Death May Die, folks, because the scenarios are going to be linked together. You're going to have decks that are going to evolve as you're going along, and you're going to be taking your actions, taking your equipment, upgrading them as you go, and then trying to navigate the scenarios that are presented to you by achieving the endgame objectives in the first place. Now, you're going to be taking 4 different phases of the rounds on a round by round basis when you go around the table. And I know I said around there a lot, but stay with me here for a second. You get your half dozen or so actions, followed by your commands in the second phase of things, followed by the enemy phase, followed by the draw phase, rinse and repeat until somebody wins or loses. The creatures themselves that you're fighting are going to have armor, they're going to have body parts you're going to be trying to hit, and you're going to be rolling dice, and you're going to be deck building your armor and your equipment to go along with it. The interesting aspect is that they have a Kickstarter exclusive expansion. They do this on all of their campaigns, just like Simon. So you know you're getting a little bit of a price point. It's going to be more expensive overall. You're getting a free upgrade pack too. So awesome. The main aspect otherwise of this, though, that I didn't mention yet, is you going between combat phases and overworld encounter phases. And the difference between that, how that's going to be able to interact. Are you going to really like one or the other? Because I've seen a couple of these games and I've played a couple of these games over the last 2 years. And, you ultimately find yourself really preferring one, or you ultimately find yourself, really having a slog with the other, right? Like Etherfields, right? Like no one wanted to be in the dream. They wanted to be adding the actual, like, okay, I'm going through the tiles sort of thing. That'd be my issue with this one too. Is just one going to be so much dramatically more appealing to you, and you're going to be stuck doing the other one more than you want in the first place. The miniatures here are never the issue. Price point isn't really ever the issue in terms of, is it a good value, quote unquote. But for someone who was not interested in the first one, is this one going to change your mind right now? And I also don't see as much of that on the page to show me, okay, what have we actually done that's a little bit better? 25-hour campaign, more with expansions. That worries me right there, though, because as I just said, there's this one pledge level, but you say expansions right there. Similarly to the Heroes of Air, Land, and Sea, that graph was done purposely. This wording, I'm sure, was done purposefully. So whether or not those expansions are going to be out during this campaign, well, that's where I don't know. There's a rule book. I give them kudos for that. But the other aspect I get worried about there is it's only a 17-page rule book, which I don't think is going to encapsulate all of the various things that this end rule book is going to look like or need to hold. And so that would be my slight worry there, which is why I say in this one, more than anything else, watch the gameplay that Steamforged puts out. Now, the issue I have with this always, especially from creators of a game putting out their own video, is how much internalized rules are they utilizing versus somebody new trying to learn the game. I just played a couple games over the past couple days where you could clearly tell some of it was outside tested and some of it just wasn't. Like, I'm reading through the rulebook and I'm really confused because it's clear that people who knew how to play the game wrote the rulebook. It's not clear that people who didn't know what was going on would be able to pick it up. The other interesting aspect that I alluded to a few minutes ago is you have these first thoughts by a bunch of other creators. And I can't say anything to any of these. I can't speak on any of these, but I just get a weird feeling when I see videos like this, because essentially I'm assuming what you did was you had people play a game with you or in front of you, and then you sat down and had them immediately film something along those lines, right? And I know if I'm put on the spot like that, that's going to make me probably not feel completely comfortable. And it also would make it hard pressed for me to have the thoughts that I necessarily would have if you gave me time to sit down in front of my own camera here without any pressure or without any, appearance of influence. I'm not saying that there's any influence there. I trust a lot of those people to give me their most honest opinions. But if you're put in one of those situations, I don't care how you are or who you are, it is going to have an effect on you in some way, shape, or form, especially if you're being taught the game. So being taught the game versus having to learn the game yourself, those are two completely different things, right? If you're the person at game night always having to teach the games, or if you're the person at game night always being the one learning the games from somebody who knows what they're doing versus someone who doesn't, those are significantly different. So that's why I say go back up here to the top and check out the videos of the playthrough itself. So there you go. We're going to see where this one goes. I'm going to watch this one to the very end because I want to see what else they've got in store and what other extra content they're going to have. And maybe they're not going to have any, but we'll wait and see. So there you go. Next up, we'll talk about Firefighters on Duty, which is another game where, very similarly as we just talked about Horizon, you're going to have to actually do more than just read a rulebook to actually get a better sense of the flow of the game, because it's a real-time action-based system where you are not necessarily asymmetrically, but simultaneously rolling dice, taking actions based on what the dice give you, up to a 2-minute per round, trying to utilize the resources at your disposal of loading and unloading, loading and unloading, loading and unloading, whether that's being civilians, firefighters, water, or anything else resource-wise that you may need equipment to put out these fires around the town, because each of these buildings on the map itself are going to require different amounts of water. The water is going to be in the form of dice that you're physically putting in squares on your little movable fire truck. And the issue I have with this is that I guess don't get the greatest sense of flow of how the gameplay is actually going to look, despite the rulebook being on the page. Now, if you're watching this at the time of, this going live, you probably missed out on the early bird with the 72 hours there with a mini expansion. But, our Tipia games here, the price point is relatively decent at $65 for one edition of the Kickstarter version. I just don't know if some of the deluxifications are going to be what you want, because the main difference here is silk screen printed meeples more than anything else, and a little bit of double layered whatever boards. So if those aren't a huge thing, then awesome. You have a scenario based system with asymmetric setups with variable different squares on the board themselves that are going to all require different amounts of water to put them out as the fire spreads via a unique mechanism as well. It's real time, so you just roll, go, roll, go, roll, go, roll, go as fast as you can over a certain number of rounds in the scenario as a whole. You're going to be rescuing, you're going to be putting out fires, you're going to be taking your equipment around and doing whatever you need to do. Now, it's 1 to 4 players. They give you a couple options with a little bit of add-ons here as well, with additional tile boards to give you, again, more modularity and just more difference in every single scenario if you want it as a whole. But you also have some generic ones that will be manipulated by anyone on the board in the first place. So the deluxification is going to be really the reason to get it at this time. You can get a little add-on down here, but that's going to push you probably over $100 for a 2-minute per round real-time cooperative game. And just like with some of the other real-time games, as I've said before, Bullet, Fit to Print, Sorcerer City, Those sometimes are your ilk, and sometimes you like the mechanism like me, and sometimes they still fall flat. And that's why I look at this and I go, I need to see a gameplay. I would want to watch this to know how it actually flows. I love the scenario sample book and I love the rule book there, but you need to watch one of these paid previews here in order to actually get a better sense of the flow. But unfortunately, that's mostly what's on the page too. So there you go. Shipping is going to be another $20, and that's why I say you get one of those add-ons as a whole, it's going to easily push you over $100. And so $100 for a real-time game, that is a pretty penny, and that's why I can see people going either way right now. POLA, the magnetic game. You're basically making 3x3 or 4x4 cubes in this 2, potentially up to 4-player game, and all you're doing is you're adding 1 cube to the cube. And you're going to be trying to make tic-tac-toe 3 in a row, essentially, at the end of the game. And the most 3 in a rows that you have is going to get you the most points. But you'll also notice that some of these shapes are also slightly different in the hearts or the arrows there. And that's going to have different powers. The problem is there's no rulebook on the page at the time of me filming this. They say they're going to update it later. Again, why you would launch without having the rulebook up there makes no sense to me in the first place. But you don't actually get an explanation of what those different shapes are doing right there, as you can see in the graphic. And there's a couple videos that I'm sure give a little bit more detailed explanation of it, but it'd be nice to know on the page, because if you're going to charge me $65 again for this game, just as much as the other one, that's a lot of money for me not knowing necessarily what I'm getting. And from an abstract style, I think that's also why it's having trouble funding. And it's not even at a third of the way of its funding goal at this point, is because abstracts are hard. And tic-tac-toe as an abstract is an even harder sell because most people are familiar with the original and think it's too simple. And so if you're trying to sell that in a 3D mode, yeah, I know it's going to be more complex, but I also look at all the other abstracts in my game collection and I go, what is this one bringing? How is this one better? I could buy 2 of the GIP series and maybe a side copy of Hive for the same price. And those ones I know stand time tested and true. So, you know, $150 for 2 of them. If you want to play 4 people and make a 4x4 as well, I mean, that's awesome, but it can be portable. It doesn't make me feel any different at this point. So we'll see where it goes. It has an uphill battle, though, as an abstract as well as at a price point. And I understand why it's priced what it is. I mean, making this magnetic and stick together and component-wise is probably not inexpensive whatsoever, but it's a harder sell with this as a whole. So check it out. Eschaton, Iconoclasm. This is a deck building meets area control-ish in the lines of sort of a Tyrants of Underdark, if you will. It's 7 years old, and it's coming out with a second expansion, and somehow it's got $40,000 of its $6,000 goal, which is pretty freaking amazing. But the thing I don't really get is how to actually play the game on the page. I actually had to go over to Board Game Geek to get any sort of description, rules, overhead, anything of how this is incorporating those 2 elements as you're drawing cards, building your decks, having your characters, which are going to have like 4 different attributes on them that are going to contribute not only to how strong your army is, what you can buy, but where you're influencing things on the map in the first place. And this is offering a, as it says down here, a cooperative, because the base game itself is competitive. The issue, again, I don't see, and it says from 1 to 6 people, is what's making it competitive? How do you actually compete? You're going as a 1 versus all in the cooperative here, but it's going up against, what do they say, the imperative? No, the Inquisition. Imperative. And that's your AI adversary driven system that you're going up against. As they hold positions, they're going to perform actions in the territories they control, just like you normally would. Loss of these territories is going to provoke them, and you're going to be trying to gain the victory and the blessing of the Dark One, essentially. So it reminds me more of Wheel of Time with the Dark One. But I mean, it gives you just the vaguest description, overview, word salad of the mechanisms that they're using here. The Inquisitor's Tactic Deck, based on where they are, they add a number of cards to their actions every turn to increase their AI system. Resources are there, Arbiters are there, the Citadel, Arcana, Events, Stretch Goals, Shipping, and that's it, folks. That's it. And this dark tone they're going for here, even when you pull up the Board Game Geek page, the rulebook is done in the same way, which actually kind of makes it a little bit hard to read. But check out a few quotes here. That's it. That's it. There's no how does this interact, flow, gameplay issue. So if you like it, I guess this is offering a cool cooperative, because you know me and I like cooperative. I like deck building. So I'm intrigued. That's why I went over to Board Game Geek in the first place to check it out. But are those mishmash of mechanics, because there aren't many games that do that, going to be something that you like? Especially offering you a mishmash of mechanics from now a cooperative with that alongside of things. So early backer is going to get you $45, saving you $5, and $50 gets you the expansion But if you want the base game alone, it's going to cost you with the expansion $100 too. So the other expansion in addition, $150. So 50, 50, 50 essentially for everything. Okay. And that's actually, I guess, a decent price because it's not widely available on any of the big marketing stores online. So this might be your best chance to get it if this really appeals to you. But if you really want to know anything more actually in depth, unfortunately, the page doesn't tell you, and you're going to have to go to Board Game Geek to check it out in the first place. So do that if you have serious interest. Now I have to talk about this Genshin Impact dice collection from my friend Ming over at, well, brother Ming, because he has put out some very interesting IP-based games as well. And I'm sorry, Ming, I apologize. I am way overdue on my Genshin Impact deck building game review, as you know, frankly speaking, probably one of, if not the hardest deck building game I have ever played. The difficulty is that intense, folks. But this is just dice based off of Genshin Impact, and they're stone carved dice, and so they talk about how they're different than other ones. And if you really like D6s, D12s, D20s, and a set collection for RPGs, these look pretty cool. Ooh, that's expensive. A single D20 is $18, and a single full set is going to be $78. Whoo, dog, you're going to pay a pretty price for that, and you're going to pay it because of IP and stone carvings. But there you go, check it out. It's not any short of hitting its funding. It's 5 times it at the time of me filming this, so there you go. Now, Bards versus Humility. This is Cards Against Humanity with a D&D spin. You basically just create crude jokes with an RPG style feel, but then somehow they also include a dungeon exploration version of things with weapons and enemies and traversing through the dungeon cards here, like it says. And then you shuffle and go downstairs, or they kill you, and somehow you get eliminated in a Cards versus Humanity situation as well. And then for some reason they felt it was really necessary to include a not suitable for work creatures. So yeah, I guess so. There's clearly, apparently, a market for this sort of thing. Thankfully, I'm not it, but if you are, that's why I guess I mention it as well at $20,000 funded. Check it out. Speaking of things, though, Void Intentions, a print and play roll and write dungeon crawl solo. And I wanted to include this one just because when I was scrolling through things, one, it's only got $700 at the time of me filming this, but two, I just love the description of this, right? It's an unbalanced solo game, different experience every playthrough. You're just dungeon delving through like 5 levels of these sheets, trying to utilize the stairs and upgrading your character along the way, defeating enemies and avoiding just certain doom because you're timed. You only have so much time to get to the exit. So that's it. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to cost you €6 or $6 right now to get in. And if you want the expansion, it's going to be 11. That's it. That's all you need to know. I just thought I'd highlight it and tell you to check it out if you want. There you go. Crowdfunding roundup on a Black Friday. Hopefully short, sweet, and enough to the point with a few rants, rambles, and raves thrown in there, especially with the big campaigns, because this price creep thing is real. This is concerning. Like, to get any sort of full gameplay experience, you're going to be spending anywhere between $150 and $300 now on crowdfunding. Which, again, people poo-pooing or mocking things like Nocturne from Flat Out Games or AEG, like those things, like, oh, I'm sorry, I like a game that's $30. I just saw someone over the other day on Reddit, they were posting all their games they played at one of the local conventions. You could clearly tell what their preferences were because it was basically like, things I didn't like, everything light. And then only things I liked, super heavy. And they just like disparaging remarks on the light stuff. Like, this is just crappy. This is clearly beaten out by this. And it's like, you don't like this type of game anyway in the first place. So, I guess it's good that you played it. But, also playing games that you're going to hate and then just talking about them because you hate them is also not productive. Which is why I try to be like a little bit constructive criticism. At the same time, I feel like I'm walking a fine line. And I don't want to be just the negative Nancy at the same time. But so many videos, I was just perusing another big channel the other day on their media content page, separate from not their YouTube page. And it was just literally video after video after video was all of these new games that you need to know. Our top picks for this. All of our new games for this. You need to know this game. Why you should buy this game. And I was just like, ugh. Like, that's really what our hobby is becoming. It is. And so that's why I do the relooks. That's why I do some of the other stuff. Just, again, I would be happy to get rid of half my games in here, folks. Half my games. But it's the effort, the time, as well as just the, no one locally wanting to get them, because I don't want to ship half the stuff either. And so I don't need 2/3 of these. I would be happy with 1/3 of these, frankly. And you would be too. Which is why it's okay to be critical of these things. It's okay not to spend money. I feel like people are like, I have to be backing something. I have to be constantly throwing my money at the screen to fill that gaping board game shaped hole in my heart. You don't. It's okay. It's okay. That's all I got. We did absolutely nothing on Thanksgiving for those of you in North America. We did nothing. My wife was sick, like violently ill sick, the day before Thanksgiving. And 2 of my kids were sick within the 3 to 4 days leading up to Thanksgiving. And so half of my wife's family was out of town already. So we were going to do it with my side. And that just fell through completely because of the sickness. And we didn't really want to expose people and they didn't want to come here. So we did literally nothing. We barely had a Thanksgiving meal. We're doing like breakfast leftovers for dinner. So that's it. That's it. By the way, I totally went out of my way and bought Marvel United's Spider-Geddon expansion. Simon really didn't totally announce it at all, as far as I'm aware, on some of their channels or some of the most popular usual places. And it's available on Amazon right now. So that was my Black Friday shopping, even though it was actually on Thanksgiving. So by the time you're watching the upcoming video on Saturday, if I do that this week, there's not really a ton coming. So it might be more of the looking into December video. That's what I'll be playing. Ha ha. Boom! Mic drop. I got nothing else. Check out the Patreon. Thanks for tuning in. Stay classy. Trying to do my best every week. Content creating, roundup, Kickstarter, game founding, whatever. Running out of adjectives and words at this point. See you around.